Hey everybody, welcome to Hidden Horror. Today we are talking again about improving school safety. We're referring to a report and investigation that the U.S. Secret Service did covering the years January 2016 through December 2020 about mass shootings. All of this information is about mass shootings, and we're trying to prevent mass shootings, reduce the number of mass shootings, and also educate ourselves on the attacks and the attackers. Those are the two categories that we have been looking at. We're going to finish out today about the attacks, and then we're going to be in our next video talking about the attackers. What did the U.S. Secret Service learn about the attacks and the attackers? So today we're going to be covering a few topics. Let me share my screen so you can follow along. We're going to start off with a video. This video is titled FBI Study Reveals Majority of Active Shooters Planned Attacks for a Week or More. This video is by WPTV News, Florida Palm Beaches and Treasure Coast. The video doesn't actually talk about the topic, which is really odd, but I still think it's a good video to share for the information contained. But you should know that the majority of active shooters, they take time, they plan the attack. It's not willy-nilly. The attack is planned, it's thought out. Sometimes it is a action that has been playing in the person's mind for some time. They may visit the area of the attack. They may be familiar with the area of the attack. For example, a workplace, a school, a religious building, etc. Okay, but these attacks, they are primarily planned out, and they're planned out for some time. Okay, so let's go over this video. We're going to start this to kick it off, and it's right under 3 minutes.
There's no uniform way to identify a potential mass shooter based on their background or age or race, the FBI says.
But agents are studying other ways, and News Channel 5's Michelle Casada is live with what a 13-year study has revealed to the FBI. Michelle.
Well, Jay, Ashley, although discouraging, the reality is that there were many cases where the FBI could not determine a motive. In half of the cases, it did, though. The active shooter responded to an action or perceived action from someone who took it against them between a workplace incident or financial incident or even personally. Now, the agents were trying to find certain behaviors that they could determine who an active shooter might be before an attack.
The FBI wants to learn more about what makes a person become an active shooter and can it identify certain behaviors before a deadly attack.
I think it's very interesting that generally you couldn't pick, identifiers and group them together. They really are separate and distinct.
Former FBI agent Stuart Kaplan agrees with the FBI study that there aren't specific demographics that can single out an active shooter. But licensed psychologist Dr. Rafi Wald believes, like in the case of the Parkland shooter, a history of mental illness is sometimes an indicator.
I think that if someone can walk into a school and open fire on innocent people, they at the very least have antisocial personality disorder.
But the FBI could only verify that 25% of the active shooters it studied had a diagnosed mental health illness.
In order to be formally diagnosed with a mental health disorder, they would have had to have seen a mental health professional who hopefully would have been able to see that something was going on and intervene.
The shooter who killed 58 people in Las Vegas had no known mental health disorders, but the study also found, on average, shooters had 4 to 5 concerning behaviors observed by others, and in more than 50% of the cases, nothing was done. Dr. Wall believes another reason why more resources need to be put into mental health care at schools and the workplace.
I think it will take a massive financial and manpower investment.
We have posted a link to the entire study on our website, WPTV.com. Just click the link to this story. Reporting live in West Palm Beach, Michelle Casada, WPTV News Channel 5.
Okay, so I wanted to stop that. So we're diving back into the U.S. Secret Service report. So let me pull that up. so we all can view it. I'm going to go back a few pages to So I want to go back to the table of contents. We've already in our prior video, we've already discussed timing, location, targeting and harm cause, resolution, motives, and motives. Now today we're going to be covering planning, weapons, and any additional items that the perpetrator brought for the attack. And then the next video, just so you can kind of forecast ahead, that will be in part 5. We're going to start talking about the attackers. We're going to discuss their demographics, employment, criminal behavior, substance use and abuse, mental health, belief systems, fixations, interest in violence or weapons, social isolation, stressors, behavioral changes, concerning behaviors, and bullying and harassing others. So we're going to break that down probably over several videos, but that's what you can look ahead for in part 5 and possibly a part 6. I'm sure I'm not going to cover all of that in one video. That may be 2 or 3 videos because that's a lot of topics. So let's scroll on down to where we're going to be today. And we're going to be starting off talking about ideology. What are these mass shooters thinking? What's in their mind? What do they believe? Do they have any bias? Do they have any thoughts, political beliefs? Are they doing the mass shooting based on bias? Are they doing the mass shootings based on their political beliefs, their political affiliations? Are they doing the mass shootings based on their ideology? What are they basing the mass shootings off? Are they learning something from a group? Are they reading propaganda? Are they looking at race? Are they looking at gender? Are they wanting to do an attack because they're not happy with the results of an election, or they feel slighted in some way? They feel unheard about their political beliefs. All of that can play into um, the attack, or why, really the motivation behind the attack. All of this connects together in the mindset of the person and their real belief system, if they have one. What do they think about? What are their grievances? It all connects together. Okay, so let's get started because we have a lot to go over. So we're going to start off with the ideological, bias related, or political beliefs. Extreme or hate-based views played a prominent role in the motivation for 1/5 of the attacks. That's 32 out of the 173 attacks that were covered between January 2016 and December 2020, and that equaled about 18%. So about 18% of the attacks were extreme or hate-based in the motivation. These attackers held beliefs or biases against a variety of groups, including members of racial, ethnic, religious, or political groups, as well as women and police officers. In one case, an attacker was motivated to commit an attack against a predominantly white church in retaliation for an earlier attack that targeted a predominantly Black congregation. In at least 3 cases, attackers were motivated to kill police officers in response to perceived racial injustice. For 6 beliefs related incidents, the attackers also experienced mental health symptoms that influence their motives. On March 14th, 2020, near the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, a 19-year-old man reportedly used two knives to attack a family at a superstore. Four people were injured, including an employee who tried to stop the attack. Officials reported the attacker entered the store behind an Asian family and, upon entry to the store, asked an employee where he could find the utensil aisle, where he is believed to have acquired the knives used in the incident. Upon his arrest, the man told investigators that he attacked the family because he thought they were Chinese and spreading the coronavirus. So now we're going to turn our attention to related to psychotic symptoms. In 25 incidents, 14%, the attacker's symptoms of psychosis played a role in their motivation to carry out the attack. At least 12 experienced auditory or visual hallucinations, and several others held delusional or paranoid beliefs. One attacker believed he had been possessed by the devil and heard voices telling him to kill the victims. Another believed the government was controlling him via secret online communications and was placing terrorist propaganda on his computer. On May 1st, 2017, a 21-year-old student stabbed four other male students at a university, killing one and injuring three. Less than a month before the incident, the attacker was committed for 9 days to a hospital for observation and mental health treatment. According to friends and family, around this time, the attacker's behavior began to change and he was paranoid, delusional, and suffering from visual and auditory hallucinations. At times, the attacker believed he was Jesus Christ, that others were trying to kill him, and that the world was not real. He also heard voices telling him to die. 5 days before the incident, the attacker was hospitalized again for suicidal ideation and was released hours later. The morning of the incident, the attacker walked around campus and, according to later testimony by a mental health professional, believed what he did in his attack was not real. Other motives included attackers having a desire to kill. It was 12 that had the desire to kill, which was 7%, including one who indicated killing was on his bucket list, as well as those who sought fame or notoriety. It was 6%. At times, these two motives were held together. For example, one attacker told others he wanted to carry out a mass shooting in which he killed more people than past attackers. He also claimed he would be on the news soon and recorded a video of himself styling his hair to look fabulous for his attack. The remaining motives included several attackers who wanted to commit suicide by cop or were motivated by more individualized goals, including one attacker who opened fire at his high school, killing 2 and injuring 10 as an experiment to see how society would react, and because he was curious about life in prison. In 1/5 of the attacks, 33, that's 19%, attackers made statements or engaged in prior behaviors that indicated they did not plan to survive the attack. Among these, 18 attackers died by suicide after committing the attack, including 2 who counted their shots and saved the final bullets for themselves. Others authored suicide notes or other writings indicated they would not be around to see the impact of their actions. Planning. This is what we're talking about today. Planning. This is a big topic. This is important. All 173 attacks included in this study were deliberate acts of violence. For almost 1/3 of the incidents, 53, that's 31%, some information describing the specific steps taken to prepare was found in open sources. This section outlines these planning behaviors, categorizing them across 7 broader themes. For some attackers, their planning began years prior, while for others, the distinct preparations begin the same day as the attack. The attack preparation behaviors included target related 32, weapons related 29, documentation 9, develop an attack plan 8, research prior attacks 7, research logistical concerns 6, and then 31 had other planning behaviors. So we're going to start with the target related planning, which was 32, such as following, visiting, photographing, or researching the target or potential targets. When researching the target, attackers did so both online and offline. For example, attackers searched online for information on targeted schools, looked for addresses of police officers, looked up expected attendance numbers at events, accessed online maps, called the targeted site for schedules, and asked others to find out information for them. Next, we're going to talk about the weapons-related planning. They had 29. To include failed attempts to acquire a weapon, the acquisition or manufacture of weapons or components outside of those used in the attack, which are described elsewhere, researching the kinds of weapons to use or where and how to get them, practicing with weapons, and securing firearms permits in advance. On September 23, 2016, a 20-year-old man opened fire in a department store and fatally shot 5 people. Hours before carrying out his attack, he entered a gun store and asked if they had a 45s and stuff. When the attacker asked the owner about background checks and was told one would be required, he puffed up. When he asked about buying from a gun show, the owner told him that the state requires checks for private sales as well. Believing there was something off with him, the store owner decided he would not sell the attacker a firearm. The attacker left the store without making a purchase. At the time, a court order prohibiting the attacker from owning firearms would likely have appeared on a background check. The attacker went on to use a firearm belonging to a family member in his attack. So there were 9 cases of documentation, including preparing to-do lists, hit lists, and maps of the targeted site. So some things that were included on the to-do list is get a backpack for ammo, get more PMags, try on and reorganize gear, clear browser search history, destroy old foam, put together a 22 kit, remove all weed stuff from house, put mag funnel back on, check the tire pressure, find location for push knife, put gun stuff in car when wife won't notice, put dog tags for son in buried location, rifle into guitar case, delete social media, change out all batteries. Let's talk about development of an attack plan. We had 8 that did this, which involved detailing steps that would take while conducting their attacks, such as blocking exits or employing combat techniques, analyzing the location within the building and the timing of the attack to maximize casualties based on observed patterns, and calculating trajectory of bullets. Some attackers describe these plans in journals or videos. 5 days before his attack, one attacker described his plan online, telling others that he planned to kill his father, then steal his father's keys or ride his own bike to the targeted school. He told them he would target first, that he intended to use pipe bombs, and that he planned to commit suicide during the attack. Next topic, researching prior attacks. You had 7 that researched prior attacks, to include school shootings and international terrorist incidents. Attackers also studied past attackers' tactics for the purpose of learning what they did, what worked, and what did not. Ooh, oh, it's so sad. Researching logistical concerns. We had 6 that did that. Pertaining to issues that could impact their attack plans, such as law enforcement response times and capabilities, military tactics, and whether car doors can stop bullets. One attacker researched rules about gun stores, reporting suspicious behaviors, whether Google searches are monitored, and reporting of unusual credit card spending. So we had 31 other preparations included planning what they would wear, making financial arrangements for family, purchasing other equipment, renting vehicles, setting up new profiles for online purchases, and changing schedule appointments or plans. On June 28, 2018, a 30-year-old man opened fire in a newsroom, killing 5 employees. The attacker had a long-standing grudge against the newspaper that involved extensive litigation. 3 years prior, he initially considered targeting the Court of Appeals, even surveying the building and acquiring building schematics from a floor plan posted in an elevator. He decided against targeting the court, however, due to the police presence. A year before the attack at the newsroom, he visited the building and took video of the exits, noted the dimensions of the offices, downloaded pictures of the office space, and researched the employees and their families. He considered different scenarios as to how he would execute the attack and choose the date of the attack to coincide with the board meeting and state primaries in order to maximize the number of potential victims who would be in the office. Within the month before the attack, he sold his car. Days prior to the attack, he purchased a lifetime chess membership to prepare for his future incarceration and rented a car to drive to the site. On the day of the attack, he used a locking device to block the doors from the outside and brought a timer to track the police response. Final communications and acts. Over 1/4 of the 180 attackers, 51.28%, they made final communications and or displayed final act behaviors that indicated a level of imminence to the attack. Final communications included farewell videos, journals, or manifestos that detailed their plans and motives, social media posts, goodbye calls or messages to friends and family, suicide notes, and cryptic statements to others indicating they would not see them again. Final acts some of which were part of planning, included attackers terminating a lease, giving away personal possession, no longer buying food for a pet, verifying or changing life insurance, and securing finances for family members. On December 25th, 2020, a 63-year-old man detonated an explosive inside his RV, killing himself in a downtown area of a major city. The attacker displayed numerous final acts and final communications prior to the attack. Within a month before the bombing, the attacker gave his house to someone else and told a client he was retiring. In the days before the bombing, the attacker gave his car to a friend and mailed writings and videos of his conspiracy beliefs with no return address. In the hours leading up to his bombing, the attacker broadcast announcements from his RV warning people in the area that an explosion was imminent, including a countdown before the detonation. Now we're going to turn our attention to weapons. Nearly three-quarters of the attacks, which is 126, 73%, involved the use of one or more firearms, including rifles, handguns, and shotguns. Most attacks involved firearms were fatal. That was 105, while fewer than half of the non-firearm attacks were fatal. Other types of weapons used included bladed weapons, that was 28, 16%, vehicles, 18, 10%, blunt objects, 6, 3%, explosives, 3, 2%, and incendiaries or arson, 3, 2%. The other weapons included attackers assaulting victims using their fists or other manual means in combination with other weapons. 14 attacks involved more than one type of weapon, such as attacks with a vehicle and firearm or a bladed weapon and firearm. On May 15, 2018, the owner of a day spa opened a package that exploded, killing her and severely injuring two customers. According to officials, the 59-year-old attacker was the owner's former boyfriend and co-owner of the spa and reportedly committed the attack out of jealousy after the victim began dating another man. The victim had told friends prior to the attack that she feared the attacker because he had threatened her. In some incidents, 37 or 21%, attackers brought additional weapons to the site that were not used during the attack, including additional firearms, knives, and pipe bombs. In others, attackers acquired the weapons at the site of the attack, such as a knife or blunt object that was found or a vehicle stolen at the scene. So we have types of firearms used. Attackers used a variety of firearm types and calibers, including handguns, 93 or 74%, and long guns, 40 or 32%. In some attacks, both handguns and long guns were used, 16. Of the known handgun types, most were semi-automatic, 65, and some were revolvers, 10. Of the known long guns, most were also semi-automatic, 33. Several were shotguns, 8, and there was only one attack involving firearms that were capable of firing fully automatic, 1. The most frequently used bullet caliber was 99 millimeters. In some attacks, the firearm used had been modified. That was in 27 cases. The modifications included the addition of laser sights, bump stocks, and silencers, the use of high-capacity magazines, the addition of slings or bipods to support a rifle while firing, shortening the firearm barrel, and adding stock handles. How the firearms were acquired. In over half of the attacks involving firearms, that's 56%, the attackers themselves owned at least one of the firearms used. They were wired through a variety of means, including being purchased by the attacker, that's 46, or for the attacker, 1, stolen by the attacker, 9, gifted to the attacker, 3, built by the attacker, 2, and provided by an employer, 1. In 10 cases, at least one of the attackers was subject to an age restriction prohibiting possession. 4, 6, the attacker was known to have used online communications to facilitate the acquisition of the firearm or magazines in some way. This included 3 attackers who purchased their firearms online and picked them up at a local store, 1 who ordered parts online to build a 9mm semi-automatic handgun, another who purchased high-capacity magazines, gun sights, and smoke grenades online, and 1 was contacted by a seller through a website using an alias. Okay, let's read this. So, the National Instant Criminal Background Check System is the system federally licensed firearms dealers are required to use to determine whether a person is legally disqualified from purchasing or possessing a firearm under federal law. To be entered into this system, one must meet at least one of the following criteria. Here are the criteria. They must have a felony conviction or being under felony indictment, must be a fugitive from justice. They must be an unlawful drug use within a given time frame, educated, incompetent, or involuntary committed to a mental health institution, illegally or unlawfully present in the United States, dishonorably discharged from the United States Armed Forces, renounce one's United States citizenship, being subject to a domestic related protective order, or a misdemeanor domestic violence conviction. Of the 133 attackers who used firearms, over 1/4, 29%, met at least one criterion that federally disqualified them from purchasing or possessing firearms at the time of their attacks. While most would have been disqualified for prior felony convictions or an active felony indictment, 27, many would have been disqualified for domestic violence convictions or protective orders, 14. The remaining qualifiers were related to involuntary mental health commitments or being deemed incompetent, 7. Being illegally or unlawfully in the United States, 2. And being a fugitive from justice, 2. The legality of acquisition. In nearly 1/4, 29, that's 23% of the attacks involving firearms, at least one of the firearms was acquired illegally by the attacker. In these cases, the acquisition was illegal because A, the attacker was legally prohibited by law from possessing a firearm. B, the firearm itself or modifications thereof was prohibited by state or local restrictions. Or C, the transaction to acquire it was illegal as the attacker's required license was not yet active or someone else knowingly purchased it for an attacker who was legally prohibited from doing so themselves. Excuse me. Have a sip of water. Attackers who were legally prohibited from purchasing or possessing a firearm included those who were below the minimum legal age, had been previously convicted of a felony or domestic violence offense, had a prior involuntary mental health commitment, had an active domestic protective order, or lacked the proper permits for the weapon in their city or state. Now, right over here, we're going to read this. For 50 attacks, the timing of the acquisition of at least one firearm used was found. In 19, the firearm was acquired within 1 month of the attack. In 3, it was acquired the same day as the attack. On February 25th, 2016, a 30-year-old man killed 3 and injured 14 others in a shooting spree that began with him firing on other cars while driving and ended at his place of employment. The attacker had prior convictions for felonies and domestic violence. At the time of the attack, he was under the influence of methamphetamine. Earlier that day, the attacker was served a civil protection order from his ex-girlfriend at his place of employment. About 6 months before the incident, the attacker obtained the pistol and rifle used in his attack from a different ex-girlfriend who purchased the weapons for him after he threatened her with violence. Twelve attackers, 10%, previously had a firearm confiscated, had a weapon-related permit or license revoked, or were required by officials to relinquish a weapon. Some of these attackers were court-ordered to relinquish firearms as part of a protective order or case related to domestic violence. One attacker was ordered to surrender his firearms following a domestic violence incident. However, instead of relinquishing his firearms to law enforcement, he gave them to a friend. Some attackers did not comply with the orders and failed to surrender their weapons entirely. One attacker had firearms confiscated on 2 separate occasions during a child pornography investigation and after a psychotic episode in a law enforcement office. In both cases, the firearms were later returned to the attacker. Most of the attackers who were ordered to relinquish guns or had them confiscated later went on to use firearms in their attacks. It was 9 instances of that. On February 15, 2019, a 45-year-old man fatally shot 5 and injured 6 others at his workplace after being informed he would be fired. Years earlier, he was approved for a firearm license and purchased a handgun after lying about a prior felony conviction. While subsequently applying for a concealed carry license, authorities uncovered his past felony conviction. He was ordered to relinquish his firearm and his firearm license was revoked. The attacker did not comply with the order and remained in possession of the handgun, which he later used in his attack. Additional items brought for the attack. Many attackers prepared for the attacks by bringing extra items beyond their weapons. In 1/3 of the incidents, that's 58, 34%, they brought equipment or extra ammunition. In addition to armored vests, brought in 10 attacks. Other equipment included binoculars, eye and ear protection, handcuffs, and tactical clothing like masks or non-armored vests with pockets to hold ammunition. In one incident, a pair of attackers sold handcuff keys into their underwear prior to the attack. These attackers also wore military style body armor, dressed in black, and created a homemade device to catch discharged shell casings. In at least one quarter of the incidents, 25%, excuse me, a sip of water. In at least one quarter of the incidents, 25%, the attackers brought excess ammunition with them. Though the exact amount of extra ammunition brought was unclear in 11 of these cases, the others ranged from up to 100 additional rounds to over 1,000. Those who brought the most included one who brought approximately 1,000 hollow point rounds, another who brought over 2,500 rounds, and one who brought over 5,280 rounds. Okay, so again, we have one video that we're going to share now that's going to give us some tips from the FBI about mass shootings. And then when we return in part 5, we're going to start talking about the attackers. Now, we have learned from our prior video in part 3 that most of these attacks are by individuals. They're acting alone. Okay, so we're going to pull the video now that the FBI shared with the tips. Okay, so this video is provided by Cronkite News. It's titled, "The FBI Shares Tips on Active Shooter Situations." So this video is less than 2 minutes long.
Being prepared for an emergency situation has become a necessity in the wake of several mass shootings that have happened in this year alone. Cronkite News reporter Nicole Hernandez was there as the FBI shared what to do if you ever face a similar situation.
It's sad. It's sad that it's something that you have to do because years ago you didn't have to worry about issues like these.
Roughly 100 people attended a workshop this morning to learn how to respond in an active shooter situation.
And as harsh as the reality is, it is important to be prepared for any emergency situation. And in an active shooter situation, 3 things to remember are run, hide, and fight.
Doesn't take any training, doesn't take any particular physical skill. It just takes the ability to face your attacker knowing that if you don't, he's not going to have any mercy.
There are things you can do to help prevent attacks, like being aware of unstable mental health indicators. Also, always be aware of 2 exits, add basic trauma equipment to first aid kits, and train for active shooter events.
The police are not going to protect you. They want to, but we respond to the shots. We don't respond to what happens in advance.
But that may be changing. A few states started using an app that scans social media and alerts police of any indicators before a shooting.
To try to see these things in advance and intervene and help these people before they go off the deep end.
Arizona is not using the app yet, so being alert is essential.
That's how I'm taking it. Just being prepared and be ready for anything.
In Phoenix.
Okay, so I just want to kind of reiterate what the FBI is really recommending. 3 things: run, hide, or fight. If you're able to get away, try to get away. Try to run as far as you can away from the situation that's unfolding. If you can't run, if you don't have the ability to get out, to get away, try hiding. Try to think of a space that a person would not look, that they wouldn't enter, that they wouldn't check. If you can get behind a locked door, that's great. Try to think of a space that you can conceal yourself, that you can really hide and someone walking past would not see you, okay? And the last thing is, and this is only if you can't run and you're unable to hide, you have to fight back. Do not look for sympathy or mercy from the shooter. Um, the shooter's goal typically is to harm as many people as they can, and they're not going to stop because they've uncovered you. They're going to keep going. And this is a very quick amount of time. It's sometimes just seconds, and they're not going to stop. These are usually assault style type rifles that will have a lot of shots fired very quickly. So if you cannot run, if you cannot hide, you have to fight back. Try to prepare yourself. Try to obtain an object that you can use, something that maybe has some length so you don't have to go hand to hand, up close and personal with the perpetrator. You may be able to hit them from a distance. You may be able to strike them. You may be able to try to hit the weapon out of their hand, but if it's just you, you have to fight back. And if it's a group of you, everyone has to come to the agreement that you all are going to fight back, that you're going to fight the attacker, attack the perpetrator. This may be your only chance. This may be your ability to survive. Possibly everyone would not be able to be hurt by the attacker, and you will have some survivors, but you have to come to that agreement that everybody is in to fight back and do it. Try to obtain something to fight back. So you run if you can. If you can't run, hide. If you can't hide, prepare yourself to fight back, okay? So again, we're going to start talking about the attackers next. What did the U.S. Secret Service learn about the attackers? How can this help us? You know, can we identify some of these traits in the attackers? This is the goal, right? We're going to start on that section in part 5. And today I just want to thank you for spending this time with me. I don't ask you to like a lot of videos. I don't ask you to share a lot of videos. But in this case, this video has been created for prevention, for reducing these mass shootings. And I appreciate if you like and share, okay? So thank you for spending this time with me. I really, really appreciate it. I want you to stay safe, stay smart, stay savvy. Be well, all my friends. Bye, everybody.